So we will talk about building the perfect PM, and that could be you. And I will lay out kind of a framework or a model for thinking about career development. As Eva said, I've worked at really big software companies. I have a consulting and training company, and I'm also one of the co-founders of Career.PM, which we consider a career accelerator for aspiring PMs, product leaders. We have a lot of resources that help you manage your career and an approach that I will describe in the slides today. So what would you think of a product manager who didn't have a roadmap for their product? You go talk to them, you say, where's the roadmap? And they're like, I don't have one. You might think they don't really understand their role. They probably aren't setting themselves up for success or their product up for success. And you might assume that their product isn't that important to them. Those are some of the things I would probably assume. But what would you think about a product manager who doesn't have a roadmap for their career? Same thing. You might think their career isn't important to them. My experience is everyone finds their career important. You might assume they're not setting themselves up for success or optimizing themselves, achieving the highest level of success that they can. And you would probably think that they just don't understand their role in their own career. And we'll talk about your role in your career. And the fact is, I have this on good authority and experience, most product managers and other professionals do not approach their career with a strategic perspective. They're floating around, being very reactive, all the things we would never want to do with our product, but we do it with our careers. So let's take a moment of reflection. How many of you are managing your career in a strategic way, kind of the way you would manage a product professionally? If you're not, take heart. Most people aren't, but that will change today. And it's really ironic for PMs because if you know how to manage a product, our contention is you know how to manage your career. Tons of overlap. And let's face it, as product managers, we PM everything. So why not PM your career? And I will show you how to do that in 5 pretty simple steps. This isn't rocket science. This isn't, days and days of work. It's really pretty simple. So let's go through the 5 steps. The first one is adopt a PM mindset. Hopefully you've done that. You're probably applying it to everything else in your life. Now we're going to apply that to your career. So if you think about the kind of job market out there, what are the problems in the market? Well, we need AI. We need to transition to SaaS. We need to be more data-driven. Those are the problems. You need to think about how you can solve them. How can you be a valuable product in the job market? You also have to think about how you're going to measure success and how you will achieve success. Those are different steps. One is setting the bar where I want to be. The other one is being very intelligent about how you achieve that. And I want to differentiate between a job, which is what you have now. That's like being in a city. But your career is really like taking a trip. Here I drove from Heidelberg to Istanbul, which is obviously possible. I'm not sure how fun that is. But you own this voyage. You co-own your job with your employer, but you are accountable for your career. Do not expect your employer to optimize your career outside of their organization. You might have a really enlightened manager who thinks that way. They should. Don't count on it. You have to manage your career. And first principles apply to your career. It's not rocket science. It's not something different. You need to know your destination before you start your journey. Know what success is before you try to achieve it. You should do as little as possible to reach your goals. You shouldn't overshoot. We all have lives. We're very busy. With a little planning and thought, you can achieve more with really very little effort. And you should be constantly evaluating where you're going, how it's going, and you should be adapting. That sounds like Agile, kind of Scrum. It should. That's a basic principle of how we develop software, and it's how you should think about your career. It has to be adapted. The market is changing. Believe me, the market is not the same today as when I started 20 years ago. Radically different. So we've adopted a PM mindset. The next thing you want to do is think about your career motivation. And these thoughts are taken from spec from the object management group. It's called the business motivation model. It is a hidden gem. It is hugely powerful and nobody knows about it. I'm trying to change that, but I'm one person. So your career motivation really is, how do I define success? That's the first step. What does success look like over some planning horizon? And then how will I achieve it? So these are the three things we're going to do. We're going to define our planning horizon. We're going to come up with a career vision and some goals and objectives. So I've done a ton of coaching over the last couple of years, 60 or 70 people. And planning horizons vary, but I would say the average is like 2 to 5 years. Just depends on where people are in their careers. For an aspiring PM trying to get their first gig, it may be 6 months. They may come to us and they say, I want to be a PM in 6 months. But there are a lot of factors that influence that. But you should think of a planning horizon, and just like a product, you wouldn't probably do a 10-year roadmap normally. Nobody would have faith in anything past the first 18 months. Same thing is going to happen with your career. Your interests are going to change. The market is going to change. Here is an example of a career motivation. So Alan's planning horizon is 4 years. That's toward the long end. What is his vision? You can see that. He knows that he wants to be leading a small team. He's a B2B guy. He likes SaaS. That is already a game changer for most people, really thinking about what do I want to do. And then we have a series of goals and objectives. Goals are general, objectives are time-bound and measurable. So one goal is to be promoted to director. What are some objectives under that? Needs to talk to management about it. Needs to look at the company career ladder and figure out what that looks like. What are the competencies that are expected? Wants to work on a B2B SaaS product. I won't read these to you, but it's a pretty simple hierarchy. What is your vision overall? What is this wonderful end state you want to achieve with your career? What are the general things you would like to do? And then how can you measure your progress toward the attainment of those goals? Most people can do this in 10 minutes. And it's a creative process. There's a little iteration over it. But once you have it, my experience so far is this thing, just like, the motivation for your product, it doesn't change every day. Might change every half year or a year, depending on what's going on and what you're learning. But this is 10 or 15 minutes of effort, and it's transformational. People look at their careers from a completely different perspective, and now you have something to manage against. The third step, now that we know what success looks like, we know how we're going to measure it, you need to think about your competencies. And that is a direct function of what you want to achieve. And competencies are a complex thing. It's a combination of skills and knowledge and other things. You need to think about what's important in terms of being a product manager or a product leader or a CPO or whatever it is you want to achieve. You need to figure out what you're good at, what you bring to the table in that respect, and what are the gaps. And you're going to put a plan together to close those gaps. And you can do like a simple SWOT analysis. I think that's super powerful. I'm a huge believer in very simple tools that drive insight. If you're a successful PM, you're a smart person. So where are you strong? Where are you weak? What are the key gaps? And some of these you know of, but it's a different exercise to think about. Given that I want to be a B2B SaaS product manager in a year, what do I need to learn? I need to learn something about architecture. I need to learn something about product performance, monitoring product performance, metrics. If I want to be a leader, I need to learn how to manage. I need to learn how to lead. So what are the competencies that your goals and objectives require? And what are the biggest gaps? And there will probably be a lot of them. Like everything else you do as a product manager, you're going to have to prioritize them and take them in priority order. And indeed, the people we work with, we have a backlog. So basically, our engagement with people that we're coaching is chugging through a backlog and checking things off and moving on to the next thing. There's always something in the backlog. And when we think about professional development, this is the model that we use. And I think it's a really good one. It has proven itself in battle. So the first thing you need to think about is your product competency. Do you know about strategy? Do you know about the operational aspects like managing requirements and roadmaps? Do you understand pricing if that's relevant to you? So there is this product mindset or this competency that you need to develop and think about, absolutely core. In tech product management, you also have to have technical knowledge, but knowledge is a lower bar than competency. And we start working with people, and a very common question is, should I take a coding course? And I say no. You can. I think it gives you empathy if you haven't done it. It's kind of interesting, but I would start with things like architecture. What are the big trends? What are the key programming models? What are their benefits? What are their shortcomings? Our key one is development methodologies. How does software get built? And do I know enough about it? You may know Agile, but do you know how to scale Agile? I consider that technical knowledge. That is your interface with engineering. You need to think about your domain expertise because that can really be a big differentiator. Are you the insurance person? Are you the payments person? Are you the pharma person? Are you the insurtech person? What is your domain expertise? And if there's a gap there, if you want to get into gaming, if you want to get into fintech, you have to develop this expertise. And then, of course, there are a bunch of soft skills you have to think about. And the soft skills you focus on depend on your goals and where you are in your career. I believe every product manager's most important soft skill is time management. If you cannot prioritize and manage your time, you will fail. You will be under-optimized. But there's a lot of other stuff. These are pretty big buckets, right? Communication, leadership, negotiation. I'm getting a lot of pull now around decision-making. So we're working on some stuff there. I wasn't that aware of it, but there's a lot of thinking around that. Frameworks. There are people that call themselves decision-making architects. So a bunch of soft skills. You can look across these building blocks. For each one of them, identify the one or two things that you're most efficient in, and those are the things you're going to start with. But the idea is we want to take a balanced approach. It's not just about learning how to product, how to be a PM. To be successful, you're going to have to think about these other dimensions as well, these other blocks. So as I said, think about, for where you want to go for those blocks, what are the top 5 things? Ask people, talk to people in those roles, get some insight, and then start putting a plan together. We'll talk about that in the next step for addressing those gaps. And we have a questionnaire that we use with people we start working with. I'm guessing it has 30 different areas on it. And we get a pretty good feel based on their goals, based on where they are in their career, what their biggest deficiencies are, where we need to start across those dimensions that I showed you, across the building blocks. So if I'm a junior PM, what are the kind of things I might be looking at around product competency? I need to get better at writing user stories. I need to understand how to build a roadmap. I may want to learn more about the finance industry. That's domain expertise. And I may be looking at the just common soft skills that will really determine my success. Do I know how to be persuasive? Do I know how to negotiate with folks? That's super important. And of course, for a product leader, it's a completely different set of things. We assume that they know a lot of the stuff you see on the left. But as I move into a formal leadership position, I'm probably going to have to start thinking about portfolios more than individual products. I need to really understand how to develop a revenue model, maybe a business case. From a technical perspective, I'm more looking at what are the trends that are coming that could disrupt me or that present opportunities to me. Domain expertise just depends on where you want to be. Soft skills, how do I lead teams? How do I do things like communicate bad news? How do I build the motivation for my team? How do I express to my team what we want to accomplish? Those are the kinds of things. So depending on where you are in your career and your objectives, you need to figure out where you're deficient. And then you're in a position to start creating your career roadmap. And I mean that literally. So I don't have to explain this to this crowd, what a roadmap is. A career roadmap is to your career, what a product roadmap is to your product. We don't think about it this way, but of all the work we do, I think this is the most compelling thing we do. It's great to see your goals and objectives. I've seen people just writing down their vision and all kinds of lights go off. But you should think about your progression in terms of positions. You should think about what you want to focus on. We don't do this enough. Do I want to be a manager? What industry do I want to work on? Do I want to be B2B or B2C? Because the more specific I can get, the better I can prepare myself. Product management is not just one big homogeneous thing. There is this conceptual core, but in practice, a B2B product manager at a huge pharma company has a very different set of activities, different accountabilities, different work than somebody who is working on a consumer app. That's just reality. And by the way, I think we are going forward, we're going to see this distinction will be more prominent. These kind of generalized PM 101 things are valuable, but they can be more valuable if you already know this kind of domain or market type you want to work in. You're going to have to, with your roadmap, design lead time. If you want to be a manager in 18 months, you have to start preparing now, not in 18 months. So this is an example. I just changed the name. Above the timeline, you have self-development or professional development opportunities. So this person wants to do an online PM course. They want their LinkedIn network to go above 1,000. Next year, they would like to get an executive MBA. I already need to change these dates. Below, we have changes in position. And I would suggest thinking about the next 2 positions. And it's just like a roadmap. The further out we go, the less certainty we have. And some people may say, I'm a junior PM today. Someday, I think I would like to be a CPO. That's all I know right now. Well, that's okay. But the more specific you can get, the better you can prepare. And having these milestones in mind will help guide you, will help you, rationalize that lead time. I'm telling you, this is a big deal. If you can just get to this stage, you will already be, managing your career much more strategically than probably 99% of product managers out there. We work with a lot of people. I haven't seen anybody that's had anything really close to this. I've run into some people at events that had something in this direction, but this is something we know how to do. We know how to build a roadmap, do it for your career. The last thing that you have to do is start managing your professional brand. And that sounds like a buzzword. And when I researched it, I didn't know where this term brand came from, but it actually comes from, you may know, with cattle, with cows and other livestock. This is horrible, but they actually burn in a symbol into their skin so you can identify what ranch they belong to. I don't know if they do it anymore. This may be an Old West kind of thing, but that's where the term came. It was adopted by marketing. And your professional brand is how you are identified in the job market. How do you want people to think about you? How should you be identified? Are you the B2B guy? Are you the design thinking person? Are you the product discovery person? Are you the fintech person? Today I saw a promotion for somebody who does startup product discovery. That's kind of their brand. And then you have to take actions to support that brand. And the non-obvious thing is you have a brand, whether you manage it or not. It may not be in the whole market. People may not even know you're there, but at work, you have a brand. You have associations with you. My suggestion to you would be that you actively manage it. And an important part of that is managing your professional assets. And I didn't set up a poll. That would have been interesting, maybe next time. But what is your most your most valuable professional asset? The things you have in your little toolbox, what is most important? That's an interesting question. So is it your experience? Is it your knowledge? Is it your education or your certifications? It's not. Your most important professional asset is your network. To build a brand, you have to have an audience. And having a good professional network is the difference between doing things the hard way and doing them the easy way. And my experience is, personal experience even, when I was working at these big companies, I didn't think about my brand. I didn't think about my network. I went on to LinkedIn once a month if I got notified of something. I started my own company and I started realizing that I didn't have the professional network that I would like. And I've spent years now cultivating my network, and it's growing all the time. So I would think seriously about developing your network. You can meet people through your work. You're probably working with people in other companies. These days we have social media, a mixed blessing for sure, but a great way to build your brand and to grow your network. And you don't have to be one of these influencers like on LinkedIn. You can do some simple things, create a blog, and you don't have to be a subject matter expert. I tell people all the time, a lot of the posts that get the most engagement are just about your personal experience. Somewhere out there is feeling the same pain you are, write about it. Get on social media. Start liking things from people that you respect. Share what they post, comment on it. You help improve their reach. And even for, the big names in product management, you will start to get on their radar. They will see that you're liking and following and commenting on their stuff. You're doing them a solid. That helps extend their reach. And in return, they might help extend your reach. And what I'm seeing more and more of these days is PMs creating an online portfolio. So that's really traditional for creative types, UX people, designers. You can go to a site and you can see their work. Well, you should do the same thing. Who are you? What are your experiences? What kinds of things have you done? Can you describe your biggest achievements? Can you talk about the products you've actually developed and point people to them? And part of this is just developing this kind of hygiene reflex. So one of the things I would do is write your motivation down and take it into your leadership. You will blow them away. And the conversation is, this is what I want to achieve. How are you going to help me achieve it? That's how you should look at your employer, your management. It's not your job just to please them. That's part of the equation. But an equal part of the equation is, what are they going to do for you? And I have found that to remind myself, we're all really busy. Your calendar is your best friend. Put reminders in there every quarter to review your roadmap. Schedule that, hey, right now we're coming up with development budget. By the end of January, I need to have figured out which events I'm going to. And get on social media. Start your day that way. Read a couple of articles, like them, learn. YouTube is a great resource. Social media, same thing. Like, share, and over time, you might start feeling comfortable actually generating content. I'm tutoring a guy now who does IoT in the consumer space, and it was so great. Just last week, he sent me his first kind of big YouTube interview. Very cool. You can do it, but you have to put a little effort into it. What have I learned in coaching all these people? This number has gone up, by the way, and people at every level, aspiring PMs, practicing PMs, junior, senior, product leaders, up to, group product manager, kind of pretty senior folks. Writing down your career motivation and doing your roadmap is a game changer. No one is actively managing their professional network, slightly overstated. When I start working with people, it's not like they have all this material we review. We have to build it. So, take that to heart, do something. I find that people do not invest their own money in their careers. That is, you're not saving money, you're costing yourself money. And the rule of thumb I've come up with is, look at your gross salary, calculate 1.5% of it, and that's what you should be investing in yourself, whether that's going to events, buying books, taking courses, whatever it is. Don't rely on your employer to fund all your professional development. You should be investing in you. And something, probably the biggest surprise, is that I talk to people all the time about their aspirations, what they want to achieve. They never talk about salary, never. I've never had somebody say, I want to be making 150,000 euros by the end of next year, never. And I think part of that is a function of, product managers are pretty well paid, but I think there's something more about what really motivates us in our careers. It's not so much money. My experience is we want to be paid fairly. We don't want to feel like we've been taken advantage of. But money isn't what should be motivating you and should not probably be the primary factor in your decision-making about your career. Follow your passion, think about what you want to achieve, and act accordingly. So what is the summary? If your product has a roadmap and you think that's important, why doesn't your career? There are 5 steps that you can take today or tomorrow to start managing your career. Start thinking about your career as a product. Super important. Take all this stuff you've learned, apply it to your career. Define your motivation. What does success look like? How will I measure it? Think about your competencies based on what you want to achieve, and really start focusing on your weaknesses. Your strengths will help you, but they're your strengths. Figure out where you're weakest and put a plan in place to address it. You can do that on your career roadmap. Write it out. Whether you use a spreadsheet, there are tons of Kanban, there's a million tools you can use to do that, right? There are a bunch of flavors of roadmaps. I like this milestone thing, but roll your own there. And then manage your personal brand. You have one. Figure out how you want to be identified and work in a way that creates that perception in the market. And, you know, think about this hygiene process and keep yourself honest by putting things in your calendar to remind you